Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about notice and note for nonfiction reading. All right. So the first two skills in notice and note for nonfiction reading are going to be contrast and contradiction, and then extreme or absolute language. The bookmark that is on the left-hand side of your screen will be provided to you in class, either in person or as a digital resource for you. So we use this bookmark when we are reading so that we can know what we need to be looking for. As we're reading, we're going to be using an annotations tool on Common Lit or highlighters in the classroom. When we look for contrast and contradictions, we're going to be using the pink highlighter for our nonfiction reading. We also use the pink highlighter for contrast and contradictions in our fiction reading, but that's in a different video. So as you're reading an article, what you're going to be doing when you're looking for a contrast and contradiction is paying attention to when the author presents something that contradicts something that you think, or that shows a sharp contradiction between people or ideas. So when they're comparing and contrasting two things. So they may say previously, or before this, or in contrast to, or against. Those are the kind of words that they're going to be using. When you see these, what you want to do is stop, highlight that section, and then ask yourself, what does this make me wonder about this topic? Why are they choosing these two things to show me a contrast in this particular article? So the reason we do this is that it helps you to see the details that show you the main idea, to help you to compare and contrast, understand the author's purpose, make inferences, make generalizations, and notice the cause and effect that the author might be trying to use in their presentation of their ideas. This is often a subject that many of you sometimes struggle with, because the topic of a nonfiction piece and the actual details or main idea might be a little bit different. And when you guys are testing or you're doing something where you need to present evidence, many times it's difficult for you to find the evidence to prove your point. So when we are using these annotation techniques, what we're doing is we are pre-identifying evidence for questions we might be asked later. All right. The second one we're going to look at is the extreme or absolute language. So when you're reading an article, many times the author will choose language that is there to show us that something may be of very significant importance in their idea. So you're going to look for when the author makes a statement that allows for absolutely no interpretation or seems to be somewhat unreasonable. When we say seems unreasonable, those are when we're reading nonfiction texts that relate more to things like arguments or persuasive writing, or even in the case of sometimes political use or propaganda even. All right. What you want to do is, when you notice these pieces of language, though, you want to stop and ask yourself, why would the author choose these words? Why are they using this type of language? And what is the end result that they're trying to get at here? What do they want me to be thinking? What do they want me to do? Those kind of things. So really, you're asking, why are they saying it like this? So like when you respond to your mom's question about, do you want to clean your room today? And you're like, no, not really. Was she really asking you if you wanted to clean your room today? Or was she asking you in the form of a question to go clean your room today? Maybe she didn't really want an answer. And so when you said, no, not really, it upset her. I know that's usually how I feel, but my parents were notorious for asking me to do things in the form of a question. So your answers are going to help to tell you something about the author's point of view and their purpose in the text. It also might help you realize that the author is exaggerating things to make you think a certain way. So they might be trying to manipulate you in some ways. So we're going to be looking for extreme or absolute language in our articles for the next few weeks. So each week we're going to be adding on one or two of these until we can use all of them together. So I'm also going to show you now with Common Lit how you're going to use the tools in Common Lit in order to annotate your text so that you can practice these skills. In the classroom, it's so much easier because you can just pick up highlighters and do these things. But digitally, sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge. So the tool we're going to be using is this marker up here in the corner. What you're going to want to do is click on it so that the system knows that what you're going to be doing is highlighting and annotating. This little box usually pops up for some reason, and it like hovers over things, and unfortunately, you can't move it. So if you're going to be highlighting something at the beginning, you just kind of have to work around it. So what you're going to do, for example, if I was looking for a contrast and contradiction, well, the first thing I noticed in this article, which is entitled Tiny Plastic Big Problem, is actually in the title. Tiny and big don't necessarily go together. So there's a contradiction there or a contrast. So I might even just highlight this piece here for myself. And I'm going to click that one more time. Oop, on the wrong spot, sorry. So I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to highlight. There we go. It should work this time. Why aren't we like highlighting here? Give me a second. I'll get it to work. It'll pop up. Problem is I'm on the teacher end, so things don't always work the way they do on student end for me. So give me just 1 second here. Okay, so it appears that the highlighter is not going to work for me, so I will make my best. So when you're working on it from the student point of view, you'll highlight this and you'll get a little box that pops up here that will have a T at the top and then a little highlighter at the bottom. On the highlighter, you're going to then hover over it and be able to choose the color of your highlighter. You're going to choose the pink because you're going to point out that this is a contrast and contradiction. Then you'll go back and highlight it a second time so that you can click on where it has the little T for text. So you can add a text box where you would say, tiny plastic big problem is a contrast or contradiction because they're contrasting the fact that it's tiny pieces of plastic that you would not think would be big problems, but they are somehow creating a big problem. This is going to go with the question of why would they use this? Why are they making this contradiction with me? So you might make an inference here that they're going to be talking about why cutting up my plastic into smaller bits might not be the best decision in the world when trying to dispose of plastics. Okay, well, that's just my inference. You might have a different one. All right, so as you go through in your reading, you're going to, again, find different pieces where you're going to have that opportunity to highlight. I think it might have just started working for me. Let's work. There it goes. All right, so here's the box I was looking at. So I can then click on the text here, and it will automatically underline it for me, and I can put in whatever I want to say about this. So I would first have to have chosen this selection for a reason. So let's say that I'm going to use this as my extreme language or absolute language. So instead of saying they may break down, I'm going to say, okay, they don't easily degrade. Their degrade is kind of an extreme language because they're trying to say that it doesn't break down, it doesn't decompose. So I'm going to say that this should be extreme language. And then I'm going to list the words that I feel like are extreme, like degrade is kind of extreme language. Or maybe they're saying deadly, excessive, those kind of things. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I've highlighted the color here. Whoop. There we go. Get our color back. And let's say I accidentally make it yellow and I want to make this pink, remember? Or rather orange. I apologize, I misspoke there. Orange for extreme language. So I'm going to click on that again and get my highlighter back here so I can then come down here and click on the orange and change it to that color. Many times, though, when we're reading nonfiction, I'm going to point this out to you, we often have extreme language in a contrast and contradiction. So you're probably going, well, what do I do if I have both of them in the same passage? That's understandable. So I pointed out here that the extreme language is in this word degrade. So maybe what I would do then is come in here and then take my highlighting tool over the sections that don't include that word, but are still part of the extreme language and the contrast and contradiction. And I'm going to highlight everything except for that word that is the extreme language using the pink to show the contrast and contradiction. Okay, so when I'm done with my article, I will have this nice little color-coded thing where if I come back and I'm looking at a question, for example, question 1, when it asks me what happens to most plastic waste over time, and I'm like, oh, I need to figure this out before I answer because I know I'm being graded for accuracy. I can now go back to the text and quickly find what it was that I was looking at. I have a note here for myself about why I chose that. And then I can find the evidence I want in order to answer it. So I can then come in here and say, I know that it does not eventually break down because what I highlighted clearly states that it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily become a rock or other hardless material. I'm going to say D, it gets torn into little pieces that spread. Awesome job. All right, so if you need help with this skill, you can review the video that is attached to your article, go over the materials provided for you in class, or as always, you can reach out to your teachers at any time. So I hope you got something out of this video and have a great day and make great choices.